Hi Year 9, this equation is looking at using inverse operations to solve equations. And this is the method that you pretty much use to solve equations every single time that you would have looked at in Year 8 and you know well. And it's the method you're going to use every single time unless the question says solve using the trial and error method or solve using backtracking. You don't use those methods unless we're asked to in an exam, okay? Inverse operations is a formal method of solving equations. And before we start delving into this lesson, I want you to answer two questions, okay? The first one is, what do we mean by the word inverse? And what do we mean by inverse operations? Now, we've just finished our trigonometry topic, and we saw the word inverse there. When we were finding an angle, we used the inverse function, okay? So think about what that meant there, and think about what other things you know of that inverse might mean, okay? If you know what inverse means, then what do you think inverse operations mean, okay? And like I said, we always use inverse operations unless the test or exam asks you to solve in a different way, okay? So have a go at writing down what you think the word inverse means and what inverse operations means. So pause the video now and write down your own definition, okay? Okay, so you should have now written down what you think the word inverse means and what inverse operations mean. The word inverse means, basically it means opposite, okay? Or, yeah, almost like the other side of something. So it pretty much means opposite for most cases. So in trigonometry, when we're finding an angle, we'd have to press shift, okay? Because we're doing the opposite of finding a side. We weren't finding a side, we're finding an angle. Here, so for example, I could give you some words like up, back, day, and you could give me the inverse words. So the inverse word to up would be down, the inverse word to back would be forward, the inverse word to be day would be night, okay? That sort of thing. So the word inverse just simply means opposite, okay? So check that with what you wrote down and fix that answer, okay? What do we mean by inverse operations? Well, operations is in maths basically means when we're either plussing, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So basically what inverse operations means is you're doing the opposite operation to what you see. So you're doing the opposite operation to what you see. So if you see something being plussed, to get rid of it or take it to the other side of the equation, you need to minus it. If you see something being multiplied, then you need to divide it. If you see something being divided, then you need to multiply it. So it's doing the opposite every single time. Let's have a look at some examples together. So make sure you got some answers for those down. In these examples, the instruction says to solve the equations using inverse operations. So let's have a look at some of those together. And this should start coming back to you as we go through them. Okay, so let's have a look at these two examples. I've sourced these from Spectrum Maths 8, so hopefully they're a bit different to the ones in your textbook. So if we're looking at this first example here, I've got 10 take away 3p equals 16. Now we always want to get a positive value of p, okay, otherwise we get more work. There's lots of different ways you can do this, you can solve this equation. So my first step is to get rid of this 10 because we want to try and get p by itself, but at least let's try to get minus 3p by itself. Because this 10 is positive, I'm going to do the inverse operation to both sides, in other words the opposite. So I'm going to minus 10 to this side, and I'm going to minus 10 to this side. 10 take away 10 is 0, and I'm left with minus 3p on this side. 16 minus 10 is 6, okay? Now if I want to get p by itself, well, what's happening to the p? It's being times by minus 3. So the opposite of times is divide. So I'm going to divide by minus 3. Minus 3 divided by itself is 1. So I'm left with p equals 2. Well, 6 divided by minus 3 is minus 2, and that's my answer, okay? If you want to check if you're right, you can substitute it back into the equation. So is 10 minus 3 times minus 2 16? Well, I would have minus 3 times minus 2 here, which gives plus 6. So 10 plus 6, is that 16? Yes, it is. So this is my final answer. Okay? So inverse operations is all about doing the opposite thing to each side until you get your pronumeral by yourself. Remember, solving equations is all about isolating a pronumeral, getting the letter by itself. Let's try this time. This time I've got negative 5 minus 2w equals positive 5. I want to try and get at least this minus 2w by itself. And you'll notice that I'm taking the term in front of it. Okay, so in this equation, I've got a minus 5. Sorry, in this term, I've got a minus 5. In this term, I've got a minus 2w. And in this term, I've got a plus 5. Okay, so I've got a minus 5 here. If I want to get rid of it, I'm going to need to plus 5 to both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side in an equation, you have to do to the other. Minus 5 plus 5 is 0. So I'm left with minus 2w equals 10, because 5 plus 5 is 10. Now this says minus 2 times w, so to get rid of the minus 2, I have to divide by the minus 2. Minus 2 divided by minus 2 is just 1, so I'm left with w equals to minus 5. And you can check to see if that works in your original equation. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to get the idea of this now. With inverse operations, what we're doing is we're solving our equations, isolating a pronumeral, and using inverse operations. Okay, so make sure you get those answers down clearly. Just going to clean my slate, and we'll do a few more examples together. So let's have a look at, we won't do all of these because I want to leave some of you to try for some of them for you to try for homework. So let's have a look at some of these. Okay, let's have a look at, I'll let you do question M yourself. Let's have a look at question N. Okay, so I've got one takeaway, a over t equals minus 3. Now this equation has a fraction in it. And whenever you have a fraction, you have to get rid of the denominator, the thing on the bottom, every time first. So this is a divided by 2. If I want to get rid of something divided by 2, I do the opposite. So I need to times it by 2. But not do I only times this by 2. I have to times every single term by 2. So that by 2, that by 2, and that by 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I've just got 2 minus a equals, and minus 3 times 2 is minus 6. This is a plus 2. I want to get rid of it. So I'm going to minus 2 to both sides. 2 minus 2 is 0. Got minus a equals minus 8. This is really a minus 1a here. So I'm going to divide both sides by minus 1 to get a equals 8. Okay, so that is really, really important. Now this one here, I'm not sure if you remember how to use grouping symbols, and we're going to look at it more next time. But with grouping symbols, we use what's called the distributive law, which says if you've got something in the front, you can multiply that by the thing inside and by the second thing inside. Okay, so 3 times x plus 3 times y is 12. Okay, now we can't actually solve this equation, so we've got two unknowns. But we could find values of x and y that give 12. For example, I've got at the moment 6 here. So I need another 6. So I could say that I could solve it by inspection and say that x is equal to 2, which would give me 6 there. And I could say that y is equal to 2, because that would give me 6 there. That's an option. But yeah, that question's really in there by a mistake, so don't worry about it too much. We'll come back to it later. Make sure you have a go at question M and O for homework. And let's quickly have a look at 1 or 2 more examples so that you're ready to come to class. You don't need to worry about question E, we'll do that next time. Let's have a look at this question here, question H. Okay, it has a decimal in it, but it's going to involve the same process. Okay, so we've got 2x is 0.6. It's 2 times x, so I need to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I've got x is equal to, then I need to figure out what is 0.6 divided by 2. Now if you can't do that off the top of your head, just type it into your calculator. That's the simplest thing you could do, and you know that you'll get it correct. So 0.6 divided by 2. See if you can do it in your head. Probably be good. It's pretty easy. So 0.6 divided by 2 is just going to be, if you figured it out yet, it's going to just be 0.3. Okay. Okay, those are all the examples we're going to do. Please make sure that before you come to class you've written a summary of what you learnt, so what I taught you this lesson, and then you need to write down any questions that you yourself have, but also at least one higher order thinking question. Okay, so that's a question where it really makes you think and you can't just get the answer straight away. Print it off and stick it in your book or put it in your folder. Bring it to class with you. Okay, see you next time.